Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We have a big show this week with 3 brand new reviews, with 2 playing in theaters and 1 now available to stream. This week on the show, Rock Hard Rodney, played by John Cena, fills in as a made-up friend in the Prime Video original, Ricky Stanicky. An unexpected encounter, an unlikely bond, an unforgettable adventure in Arthur the King. And finally, a gym manager falls in love with a bodybuilder who's passing through town en route to a competition in Las Vegas. In Love Lies Bleeding. We've got a lot to cover this week, so let's jump right in. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows to watch, a roar and a bursting of flame. The Movie Wire podcast. You need people like me.
Podcast for hot and trending movies.
The Wire. And here we go.
Based on the true story starring Mark Wahlberg about an adventure racer who adds a new furry member to his 100-mile racing team during the World Championship race. A dog named Arthur in Arthur the King.
We all know anything can happen out there. Sometimes we feel lost. We push and we suffer. We keep going. That makes all the difference. Hey, what happened to you, boy? You don't look so good. Meatball? Look, somebody likes my meatballs. Hey, Paw Patrol, we got a race to win.
Just remember, Michael, this race doesn't define you.
I raced for 19 years. This is my last chance to win.
3, 2, 1.
I was a young boy living in the city. All I did was run.
Over the next 10 days, these athletes will cross 400 miles climbing, biking, and kayaking.
That dot is Daddy.
Go, Daddy, Dad.
That's the dog I gave the meatballs to. 3 days, 200 miles ago. Leave the stupid dog and let's go. Come on. Move. Talk. What is it, boy? Oh, God. Can't believe I almost walked right off that cliff. Extra meatballs for you, my friend. He's hurting. What do you think he went through before he met us?
Whatever it wasn't good.
How the hell did he get all the way from here to there while we were on bikes and zip lines and running and climbing?
He must have wings we don't know about.
Boy, you know I'm back like I never left. You want to start to embrace the buckets of pain?
I need a bigger bucket.
Team Broad Rail has traveled over 200 miles, and they found a companion.
Daddy has a dog?
What have you done?
And you found a new partner in suffering, Michael. Yeah, he's the king. I think we should call him Arthur. Arthur the King.
How's he doing?
He's been through so much. This dog needs a vet. I don't want you to hurt anymore. He's a fighter.
Just like you.
I feel furious.
A famous dog. Looks even worse than the rest of you. Maybe you all deserve each other. Always underestimated armor, buddy. This isn't the route on the map.
It's okay. Just follow Arthur.
Lead the way.
I've never seen anything like this.
Everybody knows about it. Guess what? I'm not a dog person.
Arthur the King is a story about last chances, self-discovery, teamwork, and even a bravery. Not just the bravery to face the elements in a 100-mile, 5-day race, but the bravery to face the thought of loss and the fear of losing. You then add a based on a true story caption in the very beginning of the film, and then you add a dog. Then you know what kind of movie you're going to get. And as I've said it before, I am a sucker for these kinds of movies, but that doesn't mean I've loved all of them. When walking into a movie like Arthur and the King, I do go in with a certain set of expectations. First, knowing, of course, it's not going to be a masterpiece, but rather, if it hits all the emotional boxes to really have me care about the story and the characters by the time the credits rolled. Mark Wahlberg plays Mikel Lenord, a professional racer that has spent his life racing hundreds of miles of harsh elements, until one race his thirst to win causes him to lose his instincts. This is where upset team member and Barbie star Simu Liu takes a picture of Mikel and posts it to Instagram, showing off the embarrassing loss and the embarrassing decision during the race. Mikel then takes a self-forced time off after losing sponsors until his wife encourages him to try one more time. This is where Mikel recruits a member from an old competitor, a professional climber and actor Simu Liu, who once forced him into not racing again. All these characters are a prescription of conflict that we would expect for a team that will face little sleep and have to travel 100 miles in 5 days. I can only imagine the conflict here. I get grumpy if I even take a look at stairs. And one of the biggest complaints I can see from viewers with this film is that we don't see Arthur the dog until almost the midway point of the movie. For a movie that markets itself around a dog, that's a big gamble. To me, this was smart to ensure that we are invested in the stakes of our characters just as much as our dog character. I did feel the high stakes. I did care about this group and its outcome. To the point, if Arthur wasn't even in the movie, I would still care about this outcome. The introduction to Arthur the dog acts as a cherry on top and a compliment to our racers. When we are actually introduced to Arthur, it's placed at the exact right time. Not just at the exact right time of a suspenseful moment, not during a huge conflict, but rather right before we run into some real trouble, which does work. Also, this is where we run into the fault of the movie, that Arthur's appearance into this film, when it takes so long to be introduced, Arthur seems to not have enough time to build upon its own individual character chemistry with the group. The film banks on one single act of heroism from Arthur to our group to convince the cast and the viewers that anything going forward, that this dog stays with them until the end. And in fairness, what Arthur does is rewarding of that, but when it comes to the balance and pacing of the movie, it doesn't feel earned. But as we get into the race with the team's new hairy team member, there are times where I feel the filmmakers couldn't find ways to really integrate Arthur into the movie to make it more interesting than what we already set the groundwork for, other than just having a dog on screen. So we still heavily rely on the chemistry and the performances of our human characters. It almost makes as a cinematic mystery of why Arthur is there in the first place. And I completely understand this is a true story, but with the second half with Arthur and the racers, it seems like Arthur is just placed in as a shiny set of keys being dangled in front of the audience until it leads to an expected emotional climax. And with movies like this, we can pinpoint a lot of different flaws, but at the same time, I couldn't help but watch Arthur, the shiny set of dangly keys on screen, because the filmmakers know exactly what kind of movie they were aiming for. As a viewer or audience member, we have all seen these movies before. What is really going to make up our mind is how this movie ends for a canine friend and who wins the race. I patiently was waiting to see if this movie would end with a forte of bliss or sadness. Not knowing the true story myself about Arthur in this race, I was curious to see what the outcome was going to be. By the time the credits rolled, I cracked a smile and I felt the need to stand up and clap, but I was reserved because I had a bottle of water and a notepad on my lap. So instead, I just wrote clap, clap on my pad. The scenes in this film that are intended to be intense are intense as it was shot for a family watching this movie. The peril is enough to make you care. The thirst to win is relatable. The conflicts between characters can feel a little safe. But again, this is what makes a movie feel like it was intended for families, but the single use of an unnecessary F word takes that to a PG-13 rating, which is an unnecessary sloppy miss from the writers and filmmakers. I found myself disappointed that this movie didn't aim for a PG rating, and felt it unnecessary to add a single word to push it to a PG-13 rating. Shame on them! But I hope this doesn't detour families to see this movie. It is one of those rare movies that will entertain all without the use of fart jokes, animation, passive adult jokes, and a big A-list of stars that lend out their voices and names that look good on a poster. Arthur the King does the job it sought out to do. But it does it better than most dog movies in recent memory. It doesn't just make the dog the star attraction. The filmmakers know this will win over the audience just by having the right dog do the right things on screen. The characters gain the same amount of attention as our dog, and they all work with a proper balance to equal a fun-filled family outing that's fun for the entire family. The producers and filmmakers could have easily fixed this for a targeted PG rating. But warning for families, if they do take my advice of it being a family movie, the movie is rated PG-13 for some mild language and the use of one single F word, which again seems unnecessary. But if you can ignore that fact, this movie does have something for everyone in the family, and will be a movie that will make you either stand up and cheer at the end, but at the very least make you crack a joyous smile. I'm giving Arthur the King 3 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now.
Now available on video cassette.
There's No Love for Bob Marley's One Love that received 1.5 stars. Madam Web just hit streaming. And Nobody Cares, receiving 1.5 stars. No man is left behind in the Russell Crowe thriller Land of the Bad, which took me to the land of the good popcorn flick, receiving 3 stars. A story of 2 ladies going south in Ethan Coen's Drive Away Dolls, which took no time at all to really go south, receiving 2.5 stars. Dig Up Someone Special in Lisa Frankenstein, which dug up all the wrong things and left the good stuff buried, receiving 1.5 stars. The greater the spy, the bigger the lie in Argyle, which was a disappointing disaster that made me root for the villain for world domination, receiving 1.5 stars. A young woman is brought back to life by an unorthodox scientist in this now Oscar winner, Poor Things, which was my second best picture pick of last year, receiving 4 stars. And finally, the war on Earth will be decided in space in ISS, which had a fantastic premise, beautiful presentation, but everything else needed to be pushed in the abyss of space and forgotten, receiving 2 stars. Now, before we jump into the last set of reviews, there is a podcast that approached me for a new segment for a show that I have had the honor to take part of. It is also one of my go-to podcasts each and every week. Some of you may remember Dan from my Movie Wire musical Spectacular. If you haven't listened to that episode, make sure you check it out. But this week on Casting Views, me and Dan do our monthly segment on Pilot Views, where we look back on some classic TV. This week, you don't want to miss this one, where me and Dan talk the 80s classic Cheers. So pull up a stool and enjoy. The link to that show will be in the description of this episode. But let's hear from Dan now.
Fancy taking a humorous trip down a random topic each week? You do? Well, you're in luck. Casting Views, presented by me, Dan, and a host of guests, bring you just that. With topics from the world of entertainment, science, sport, and everyday life, there's bound to be a topic that's going to inform and amuse. Catch Casting Views every Sunday on all listening platforms now.
When 3 childhood best friends pull a prank that goes wrong, they invent an imaginary friend called Ricky Stanicky to get them out of trouble. 20 years later, they still use this non-existent Ricky as a handy alibi for their immature behavior in the Prime Video original, Ricky Stanicky.
Stanicky, what up, man? Are you serious? Have someone call me when you get out of surgery, all right?
You should drive out there. Ricky's been there for you guys your whole lives.
The devil's in the details, my friend.
It worked.
Atlantic City, here we come.
What we got?
Ricky's cancer's back.
Why does it have to be cancer? Won't everybody get worried?
Yeah, and that's going to take us right into the World Series.
To Ricky Stanicky, the best friend we never had.
My baby's going to be born 6 weeks early.
I was born 6 weeks early.
Oh, I want to know where the hell you guys were tonight. We called every hospital and there was no record of a Ricky Stanicky.
You know, all we did was tell one lie.
Hundreds and hundreds of times over many, many years.
If the truth does come out, my marriage is over.
What if we hire an actor to play Stanicky?
Rock Hard Rod, X-rated rock and roll impersonator.
I do a whole act, wall to wall, top to bottom, jizz jams. Thanks for coming out tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So horny to be here.
This is a really bad idea.
Hey! Oh, Jesus. I've been cold turkey in the booze. Ricky Stanicky's in the program, remember?
Oh, Rod.
It's not what you think it is. It's just piss.
I'm a hyper every time. Now my mouth.
I want you to admit that Ricky Stanicky does not exist.
Hey, mas puka!
This is Ted Summerhays, my boss.
Ted, nice to meet you. Digging the suit and the seedlings, man.
The seedlings.
The hair plugs, they're new, right?
This is my hair. We're gonna lose our jobs.
That's my best friend. She a real bad on the dance floor.
Epic night, am I right, guys?
You throw it out and come back in. That's my best friend.
I was really taken with your friend Stanicky. He's got brass balls on him, that guy. That's why I hired him.
That's awesome. You just said, what did you say? Just say it one more time.
We can't let him out of our sight.
Not only did I miss the birth of my son, but I let some porno Peter Frampton impersonator snip his...
And we're done.
Stanicky, you are unbelievable.
Show's over, Rod.
It's Ricky.
Ricky Stanicky isn't real.
My job sucked, I had no friends. But now I have all those things.
Are you a fraud, sir?
What's she talking about? Best friend. That's my best friend.
We gotta get rid of him.
Every time he tries to make a point, it's like he's smoking invisible dogs.
Dear God, it's true. To support. Now it looks like I'm cupping the balls.
You know, open and honest, I wasn't really sure about this movie. I wasn't sure I wanted to watch this or even put it on the show. I haven't had the best luck when it comes to comedies over streaming. And again, the first 15 minutes in, I still wasn't sure about this movie. But the minute we see John Cena do parody songs about masturbating and walking off stage in a Britney Spears Hit Me Baby One More Time outfit, it caught my attention. The movie stars Zac Efron, Andrew Santino, and Jermaine Fowler as Dean, JT, and Wes, best friends from kids to adults that use imaginary friend Ricky Stanicky, played again by John Cena, who they use to get out of trouble or events they don't want to attend, until it comes time to finally introduce this imaginary friend to their family. This is where they hire Rock Hard Rodney, an Atlantic City performer who sings song parodies about masturbating, to fill in as Ricky Stanicky. Our three friends meet Rock Hard Rod at a casino bar, where Ricky gives a monologue to our three friends about how he was conceived by his parents by anal sex that went wrong. With how many vulgar jokes from anal sex, masturbation, circumcision, and anything else you can imagine, I really didn't see coming from a trio of screenwriters, especially from Jerry Bushell, who's responsible for Beverly Hills Chihuahua and Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return. It almost makes me curious what the writers of Sesame Street can do after dark. Alongside Bushell, we have writers Brian Jarvis from The Greatest Beer Run Ever and Dumb and Dumber 2, and new writer James Lee Freeman. Now, these writers do hit the ground running with a lot of great one-liners, a lot of vulgar jokes that aim for shock factor, or a tilt of the head that makes us think, what in the hell did they just say? I couldn't help but laugh at a lot of these lines in the beginning of the movie. When the movie's not delivering vulgar jokes, these other jokes are a hit or miss. Now, the movie does something after landing a really good joke where it feels like the movie is just throwing darts at the board, where it doesn't truly know its audience. For example, we have a scene where a goose tries to drown a dog in a style and a way that really is tasteless and just not that funny. Ricky Stanicky tends to attack his jokes with fierce writing and good writing, but then knows how to bring an audience down with depression, where it goes from funny uncomfortable to just uncomfortably cringe. We see a lot of this during the second half, where the movie just starts to run out of steam, with the exception of a funny scene that involves William H. Macy air dicking. And I'm not going to go into an explanation of air dicking. I'll leave that for you if you watch this film. Now, we see a lot of these comedies that follow the What About Bob formula, where we take a character that contrasts the other characters so much that the character itself becomes comical. And a lot of these comedy movies seem to have evolved to characters with contrasting traits to characters that just act completely stupid. This is what I really appreciate about Ricky, is that John Cena goes back to the way a character should act in a movie like this, which is a character that has contrasting traits but isn't portrayed as just silly. John Cena here is being just John Cena, and we can tell he's having a lot of fun playing this character, but he never teeters to the over-the-top cliche and stupid, but rather situational and vocal. A character that is fully confident but at the same time is playing a life that isn't his and has nothing to lose. Cena's portrayal isn't perfect, but I couldn't help but get trapped in the energy he brings to the table. Like I said before, this is John Cena being John Cena. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing memorable, but at the time of watching, it is an entertaining performance. The main problem we have, and I have to say even to a point disappointing, is the last 30 minutes where the movie really tries to stuff so much situational conflicts into it that the movie really never feels earned. By the end of Ricky Stanicky, it feels like an episode of SNL where we go from situation to situation, but it all doesn't really play together, doesn't mend together to a proper climax. I went from full belly laughs in the first half of the movie to my head resting in my hand bored in the second half. I could feel the movie not knowing where it wants to go or even how to include comedy into the last 30 minutes, or even find the right tone to end on. So what we are left with is just writers copy and pasting cliche moments from other movies that wraps the movie up with a nice little bow that we have seen from time and time again. Director Peter Farrelly, who many will know from Dumb and Dumber, Fever Pitch, Me, Myself, and Irene, Kingpin, and There's Something About Mary. Farrelly knows how to capture a punchline. There is no question to me. But when the movie doesn't have the material to work with, as we see in the last 30 minutes, he really tries to overcompensate for the lack of comedy by quicker transition shots and camera movements to give the idea of a faster moving story. It reminded me of the style of 2003's Stuck on You, where that movie had some pacing problems of the same trait, but I have to say I enjoyed this movie a little bit more. It was refreshing to see Farrelly back in the director's helm on a comedy that does push the boundaries that we really don't see anymore. We rarely see any comedies that will take a joke too far. Farrelly really does test the waters here as almost a social experiment in comedy to really ask the viewer and the audience how far is too far in comedies these days. It's a great head nod to the 90s to early 2000s when it comes to comedic films that really reach to the audience for some big belly laughs. Ricky Stanicky did have moments that really did make me laugh, but don't get me wrong. This is an extremely stupid movie, but to an extent, I was surprised with it, and at times I had a lot of fun with it. Then it falls victim to itself and really doesn't know where to go, and it banks on a set of jokes and mere premise, but nothing else. It plays like a drunk uncle telling dirty jokes at a party until he passes out an hour into the party. Finally, to just be fair, this is one of the rare comedies on streaming that really did have me laughing at times, so I will give it some credit for that. I'm giving Ricky Stanicky 2.5 stars. Kristen Stewart plays a gym manager who falls for a bodybuilder played by Katie O'Brien, who is passing through town en route to a bodybuilding competition in Las Vegas when the trip turns into Love Lies Bleeding.
You talked to your dad recently?
Why?
Give us a call.
So where did you appear from? Oklahoma? I've never been anywhere but here.
What were you doing with that big girl?
Get a lot of crazy-ass foreigners, mostly. How's it going, guys? This here's Jackie.
Hi.
She needs a job. Says she'll do anything.
Yeah, you like guns?
Not really.
What the fuck you doing here, then? A bit more powerful than a punch, huh?
Fuck yeah.
Call me when it's done.
What is this place? Huh? You don't understand. Get back in the car.
They found a body.
Looks like you've got your hands full.
You'll regret this.
We'll just need to fight back. I'm gonna tell them everything you ever did.
FBI, open up. Are you threatening me?
Yep.
Well, that was really stupid, honey.
You'll never fall in love, okay?
Love Lies Bleeding is a cinematic experience that really takes you on a ride that you really don't see coming. The movie is all about convincing and manipulating the audience to look at these characters at face value and see the way they interact on the surface, but in reality, these characters are very complex. Directed by 2019 Saint Maud director comes new director Rose Glass. And let me tell you, man, is she going to be a director to really keep an eye on over the next couple of years. Rose Glass also wrote this film alongside new full-length feature writer Veronica Tofilska. What these two writers do is really put thought into not just what the characters say, but what they do. And Glass has a true vision of her character direction of how she wants her characters to be seen. And I can tell the amount of detail in developing these characters that went from paper to screen. The title of this movie gives away how Glass wants each act in the movie to play out by emotion, action, and result. The power of emotion and secluded emotion that builds up over time. The movie again stars Kristen Stewart in hands down her best performance on screen, who plays Lou. Lou is a lesbian that manages a gym until one day, Jackie, played by Katie O'Brien from Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania, and the Mandalorian, walks into her gym. Right away, our director makes it known by the camera that Lou has an attraction for Jackie. After the gym closes is where Jackie and Lou have their first conversation, where their relationship is founded. Now, not a lot is known about our Jackie character at this time, other than she's on her way to a bodybuilding competition in Las Vegas. And I have to say, watching all these people work out and all these muscles, I felt guilty and had to put my popcorn down. But anyway, we are given very subtle hints by Rose Glass and Tofilska to keep an eye on our Jackie character as a mysterious element. Jackie stays in town for a while where she takes a job at a shooting range ran by Lou Sr., played by a very long-haired Ed Harris, and Lou's brother-in-law, JJ, played by Dave Franco. Here is where the skill from Glass's direction comes into play. As we go from scene to scene, we don't have a lot of time with any of the characters. We don't spend a lot of time explaining the actions of these characters. The film does move at a brisk pace, but not once did I want it to slow down to know more about these characters, because our writers Glass and Tofilska do a great job on giving me just enough mystery to hang on to these characters, and with Glass's direction gives us just enough to wonder what's going to happen next. This is such a prime example of paper to screen with flawless execution of vision. As we get into the second act that we would call Lies, we start to peel the onion of our characters. And this onion is shaped like a pyramid where we start at the peak, and as we peel, each layer gets big crescendos into something much, much bigger. But it never goes over the top. It never changes our character's course. We also have a big message here that our writers never really shove in our faces, or find the need to change the tone of the film by getting overly spoken words of dialogue to explain what our filmmakers are trying to go for. What we do get is some mere second shots from time to time of relevant characters flashing on screen to resemble a mere thought or emotion from another character. This is a brilliant integration into the tone of what Glass sought out to do. It gave me just enough to really read between the lines of this internal character mystery and trying to figure out not a mystery in the story, but rather the mystery in each of our characters internally. Love Lies Bleeding is a movie that really does allow us to critically think without overcomplicating it with over-explanation. It does the polar opposite. Now, as we're getting into the final act, the climax, the bleeding, if you will, this is where I do wish it did spend a little bit more time to really build into the last 5 minutes. The last act can be a little bit too symbolic. That Glass does add some bizarre visuals to ensure that the audience really got what she was throwing down, but I didn't think it really needed it. But at the same time, it was so out of left field and so bizarre that in a way, it did kind of work as an entertainment vehicle or a reward for the audience for putting in the work to see a little bit of spectacle on screen. So I'm not going to fault the filmmakers for this, because I found myself more in the middle on how I felt about the final act. What really held this movie back from mere perfection of storytelling, other than the climax being a question mark and a little off tone, was the music soundtrack, the composition, that at times didn't help enhance the story, didn't enhance the characters. Even at times, it was more of a distraction. we have a scene between two of our characters in a serious moment, and the music that came on sounded like background music for a commercial jingle for a sugary kid snack. It was enough of a distraction for me to tilt my head to the side in confusion, and as the next scene played out, all I was thinking about is how cartoonish that music was and how it didn't match anything in the movie. It was completely off tone, it was not properly placed, and very confusing. But even with its few flaws, this doesn't take away from the brilliance I felt after leaving the theater. I cannot wait to see what Project Rose Glass has lined up next. With Ghostbusters Frozen Empire opening up today, this is a film that would be so easy to overlook. Do me a favor, if you get to the theater and you see crowds of people in proton packs, and you just don't feel like watching a movie in a crowded theater, trust me, Ghostbusters isn't leaving the theaters anytime soon, but this movie will. Buy a ticket to Love Lies Bleeding, which is one of the best movies of the year so far, with creators that really know how to keep things subtle, but moves at a brisk pace that ends up with something that we have dug underneath the surface along with our characters. Love Lies Bleeding is also full of fantastic, memorable performances from Stewart Harris and O'Brien. This is a film that really demonstrates the power of emotion and what really lies beneath each person's psyche. I really do hope this isn't forgotten by the time award season hits. I'm giving Love Lies Bleeding some big love at 3.5 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Thread, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And please don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And finally, if you haven't checked out Back to the Balcony yet, make sure you do. The link to that show will be in the description of this episode. Until next week, do me a favor, make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making feature film and support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.